In this concept video, we're going to dig deep into mastering your club face control. So there's a lot of little nuances that we could go into that help relate to club face control, but I'm going to try to boil it down to a couple different parameters, which is what are the arms doing and what is the body doing. From the arm perspective, our goal is to create a little bit more stability. This can feel stiff for some, but it's a sense of tension, but in the right directions, which helps gives more club face control. If it's too loose and floppy, which we'll define here in a second, then you're going to tend to have a hard time feeling when the club face is going from open to close. So we're gonna do a little exercise to feel what I mean by this club face control or club face stability. So if I hold the club straight out in front of me, just like this, where it's pretty much pointed at my chest, and I tried to rotate the club face, I'll feel that there's very little resistance, and if I did it quickly, I can do it a lot and I can do it very fast. It's an unrestricted movement. Now, if I was to bring the club back and point it down like this, and even bend my right arm so that my shoulders are a little bit tilted, now if I try to close it, I feel like I'm limited or restricted in how much I could close it. And so that gives me liberty to feel like I'm closing it without worry of it getting closed too much. Most golfers who struggle with club face control tend to have either one dominant miss, either a big block or a big pull hook, or they go back and forth but with a two-way miss. Sometimes block it, sometimes pull it. The most common cause of this two-way miss is having the club more straight up and down like this, and the club has the free ability to close or turn with very little resistance. And so your timing just has to be really good in order to hit it straight like that. That's part of the reason why we see most good golfers, or all good golfers on tour who are really good ball strikers, tend to have more of this shaft lean position at impact, or hitting the ball with the hands more behind the arms rather than in front of the chest, or the club behind rather than in front of the chest. Now, the other element here, so we talked about, that's the arms. They're going to have a huge impact on club face control. The other component that's going to have a big impact on club face control is your body and your pivot. So where is my body when I'm making contact with the golf ball? In general, the more that my body is continuing to move on the way through, and it's not just rotation, it's more of this blended movement, but the more that my body is continuing to move on the way through, that's going to tend to slow down the change of the club face. And the more that my body has stopped and the arms pass, that's going to speed up the change of the closing of the club face. So we got three big buckets. You got your right arm, your left arm, and then what your body's doing. So let's talk through a couple of my favorite drills, or just a little bit of some awareness training on what this should look like. I've got hundreds of other drills that can work on it, but let's give you a few so you can start applying it right away. You can see I've got the hack motion on. One of the ways to train the wrist stability is by looking at your hack motion graphs and looking for the timing of your extension, as well as the amount of ulnar deviation and the timing of when you're losing it. If you don't have access to something like that, then a really easy visual, or a really easy drill that you can do, little Tai Chi training at home, is you're going to choke up all the way to the end of the grip, and then we're going to basically try and touch the golf club to the outside of the forearm, just like that. Now, at the same time, my body is going to be turning around an axis so that I'm kind of finishing in a more chest up position, kind of like this, where my body is in line with the golf ball, but it's not just turning and staying down like that. It's a movement that we call negative torsion, or I like to call bracing, because I'm getting into this really good position as if the club was going to pull me and I'm in a strong position to resist it. Now, if I was to choke all the way normal, or at the end of the club, now if I make that same movement, I should be able to get the club to just slide along the ground. This should really help with getting more soft ground contact, but also getting ground contact further forward than I might be used to. And I can do that as a hitting exercise. We'll do that a little bit later. Second one, looking at the right wrist. Now, the trick for the right wrist is in order to get it back here, we need to have this extension. But in order to get it down to match the lead wrist, we have to have some ulnar deviation. Problem is when I extend the wrist, I've restricted a lot of my ulnar deviation capabilities. So what'll happen is that ulnar deviation is going to actually feel more like supination. You'll see that my forearm is actually rotating up, almost like I was turning a doorknob this way. So if I was to bring it back here and try to maintain that extension as I'm going into ulnar deviation, I lose some of the extension, but I'm not really trying to lose that extension. Instead, I'm trying to get that ulnar deviation, and that is causing my forearm to rotate and get into a position where it would match the lead forearm. So again, we can do that in a hitting drill, which we'll do here once we're summarizing everything. Okay, second big bucket is looking at the body. And basically, looking at the body, staying about the same distance away from the golf ball as it comes in. A lot of golfers who have trouble with their club face control down at the bottom tend to have more of a stall. This can either happen when you've slid or if you've gone into early extension, which forces the arm to straighten, which gets it more in this chest out position, club in front of your chest position. Or a sneaky one is the shoulders tending to spin early, which would cause a big pull and outside in movement, but requires one of those shallowing movements late. So the shallowing movement of either standing up or tilting, those tend to cause more of a stall at impact, which will cause more of the club being straight in front, which means that the club is going to be twisting. Makes it really hard to have good club face control. That shoulder spinning movement is probably one of the #1 causes of the big two-way miss, blocks, hooks, or slice pulls, depending on what you do with your arms in the club face. Okay, so if we were going to work through a little demo, a little circuit, first one we're going to do is that lead arm, where we're going to feel like we're going to do this blend of ulnar deviation as well as flexion, or the motorcycle movement. So we're going to feel like it gets into that position there, and then I'm going to feel like I turn with my body, but not just turn, it's this blended tilt extension movement. I have other videos where I break down some of the details of that, but if you've never tried it, start with the big picture of just trying to rotate while keeping that shoulder pointing in the direction of the golf ball and without having your upper body lunge way forward past the golf ball. If I do all that together, then I'm going to slide the club along the ground, make contact with the golf ball. It was decent for a first try one arm drill. So then second, we're going to look at the trail wrist. So again, the trail wrist is feeling this extension, but now using that ulnar deviation and supination to get the club down to the golf ball. With the trail arm, it's really easy to have the trail shoulder kind of protract or get too involved, kind of spin the shoulders. So I often have to focus with this trail side on a little bit more of the extension piece of that bracing or core movement. So I'm going to feel like I'm going to get the club back, and I'm going to go into that extension to get into this really good follow-through position. Now, if I'm doing pretty good with the one arms, then I can put both arms on the club and I can try to focus more on the body leading and the body working more dynamically. So I'm going to try to now feel in this 9-3 like my body is going to be bringing my arms through. If I look at it on video, my arms still have some movement and some extension, which I've been training, but it's being dominated more from the body. If you work on those three pieces on 9-3s, go into 10-2s, and then go into full swings, that's going to give you a really tight club face control pattern. It might feel like your wrists are a little bit stiffer than you're used to, especially if your pattern is a little bit more like that, where you're really just kind of flicking the club at the ball. It's really hard to have a lot of club face control that way. So if we learn to stabilize the wrist and hit it more with our pivot, we're going to take the club face control way up. So if you like this video and you want more details as far as either the arms or the body, then click on the link in the description, and that will take you to a page where we've got a bunch more drills that will help you with your golf game.